Welcome to the Movement Brain Podcast, where we discuss the possibilities of movement through a neural lens. The Movement Brain Podcast is hosted by the Nerve Guys, Gareth Kelly and James McCambridge.
Today we're going to cover fitness goals.
Yep.
Nice and broad, we're going to cover kind of goals in terms of goals that people set for themselves, goals that the fitness industry in general have, and how that relates to the brain. Obviously, because that's all we talk about, brains.
Yeah, I like this one. This one really annoys me. I think, I consider myself a fitness trainer. I work in the fitness industry, and I spend all my time working around fitness, learning about the body, learning about how to develop whatever it is: strength, muscle, speed, flexibility, core, whatever it is that you want to call it, that shows up in all the fitness stuff. But I think as a practitioner, I'm none of those things. I had my...
None of the traditional things.
Yeah, I had my training through gymnastics, and I was always very much into, strength and conditioning is the most important fundamental part, and all you need. All of these things, if you haven't done all these things, you won't be able to do your actual training. So there's as much strength and conditioning and flexibility work that needs to be done as there is gymnastics work that needs to be done, and it just killed my love of moving. It got to the point where once I decided I didn't want to perform in circus anymore, I didn't want to do any moving anymore. And circus were really, the only reason I prolonged it was the fact that circus was more fun, it was playful, and we'll talk later on about why actually play is going to be a super important part of all this. But then the thing that I settled on was speed cubing, Rubik's Cubes, and something that I consider, it's a form of movement, it's a sport as well, it's something that you compete against other people, and it's about being the fastest, but in most people's eyes, when being in this job, I've got to be in the fitness community, I would say, I do speed cubing. It's like, yeah, but what do you do as a workout? I hate workouts, so I don't enjoy them. I'll run people through them. I'll run people through them if they want, but I'm not on board with this idea that they're necessary for me to enjoy my life, or for me even to live any kind of long life. I'm not on board with the idea that breaking a sweat is even necessary at all. Maybe there's a lot that you can get for it, but then I see all those people who live to 120 and they're smoking and drinking every day, and I go, well, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So which bits are necessary, which bits are unnecessary, and do we have to say one of them is right? So obviously, what I really like about Move to Perform is that we are very different, and where I hate the idea of doing 10 reps of anything. If I have to put reps and sets into it, I just go, yeah, I'll do that later. Whereas you're just a full-on beast with...
I just like lifting stuff.
Training, lifting things, it's add more numbers, add more reps, and do
bigger things.
Yeah, doing all the physical side of it. Yet we still somehow seem to have the same philosophy about what is good, what good training looks like, and how to develop somebody well. And what I see on these fitness groups that I'm part of as well is a lot of the time it's for example, I say I hate workouts right now. I'm doing a pull-up challenge that I've been doing over a year. My goal is to do 2,000 in June, so not sure whether or not that's going to happen, but I'm doing a lot of pull-ups. And when I tell people about this, usually I get asked for, how many reps are you doing in a... And so, I don't know, whenever I feel tired, I stop. I'm doing it to suffer. The idea is I just want to put myself through this horrible time. And straight away the comment I'll get is, that's not the best way to build muscle. And
but why? I'm not looking to build muscle.
Why do I want that? I can lift everything that I own. Like I don't even have a
At
car.
once.
You know? So why do I need to build muscle? It's
Yeah.
I can. If I do
Again,
it,
I blame the 80s.
Yeah.
Fucking action films. I think that's when this kind of thing. You look at old school strongmen and like guys from 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, big men, but they were doing feats of strength, so things like the side press and things like that. They weren't doing it to just get as big as possible. They're big physiques, and that's the way I look at it as well. Your physique and that should be a byproduct of the goal. They were doing it to get strong, to do feats of strength. And some of these guys were super flexible as well. Like they were doing full splits and everything and full back bends, but yet they were insanely strong. Whereas along comes like the 70s and 80s, and everyone just needs to pack on as much muscle as possible, and become as immobile as possible. And a lot of things dropped off, and I think it's done huge damage. Like that kind of 70s and 80s bodybuilding. Like it's great as a sport if you want to get into it, but for that to take over and morph the fitness industry into you need to pack on muscle, you need to lose weight. No, your thing isn't a sport like you're speed cubing, but you need to build strength, dexterity, speed, and flexibility. Same as every other fucking sport, if you know what I mean, though.
Yeah.
I think it's really skewed the fitness industry, and the fitness industry has forked off. It went down a really, really unstable path and a really unhealthy path for a hell of a lot of people. So that's why I think we mix quite well, because we don't focus on the journey as the goal. We actually focus on our goals. And I think the fitness industry kind of has flipped it so that they actually focus on the journey as the end goal.
Yeah,
which is craziness.
The aesthetic is the end goal, but
it shouldn't be.
Never really makes sense to. I think that's the big thing I have, is especially like when I find it very hard to coach, to pick up coaching clients, because actually for the majority of people, I find people who say, well, my goal is weight loss. I want to look, I want to lose weight as a start, and it's well, what are you going to do when you get there? It's like they say, well, this is to improve your confidence, and yes, for sure it will improve your confidence, but what's the newly confident you going to do? You just sort of stand around and actually you don't have a. I think as an example, I've worked 7 days a week for a huge part of my life. I spent the whole time, it was like 50-hour weeks sometimes, it's just work all the time. And the day that I got a day off, it was, I just can't wait till I've got a day off and some free time. I think I opened a bottle of wine at about 8 a.m. I was like...
You're like, because this is what I'm supposed to do.
Well, it was terrifying. I didn't know what to do. Like, I'd thought of the idea of having a day off for so long, and then I got it, and it was just this empty, terrifying, like, oh, what do I do now? It's like, I don't have to do all that stuff, and it's the same with weight loss. People go, oh yeah, now I look like this. Well, why did you look like that? It's so I could enjoy I want to be confident, and I want to enjoy my life. How did you enjoy your life before? Well, eating all the nice food that I shouldn't be eating to look like this, and doing all the things I shouldn't be doing. And actually, if all your hobbies are still all the unhealthy things that you didn't, that are contradicting with the way that you want to be or the way that you want to look, then actually at some point you have to go, I achieved my goal, now I want to jump back and do all those unhealthy things that I didn't want to do.
You're just going to slowly yo-yo back up to the weight where I was on hat. Then it isn't just, we're just using weight loss as an example, it could be anything to do with fitness and health, but like, yo-yo back up to the weight that you were unhappy, and then you have to start the journey all over again. Hold on a minute, is the fitness industry just really smart?
Well,
but that's the point, I think.
That's one of the other
people
things.
Confused as to where they want to go.
That's the other thing that I always say, is that when you see any tried and tested system where you see a super fit athlete at the very top and saying, hey, try my system, this is how I got like this, if it's successful, it's because it probably doesn't work. If it worked, everybody would then be that super successful athlete, and there'd be no one to sell the program to. If it's not successful, then somebody goes, well, I got that way, and for sure somebody's going to get like that. But if the majority of people don't, then that makes it your fault that you did it wrong.
Why are you not following the outline?
Yeah, so I find a lot of gym programs, a lot of motivations, and a lot of goals that people get told this is what you should be doing. So gym is for building muscle and for weight loss, and those aren't things that are actually useful in that person's life. So no matter how close you get to them, you're gonna start just veering away. How you look is only really useful to the Instagram models and bodybuilders that make their living off of that.
Yeah.
And maybe movie stars as well, but even movie stars to have those stories of how they don't want to do that again. They get in shape for the movie, they lose all the weight, and then straight after they say, I'm not eating like that, I don't want to live like that anymore.
60 pizzas, please.
So those people, they make their living in it, so it makes sense for them to everything is built around looking like that, because that's how they earn their income, and that's how they're surrounded by everyone else in their life is doing the same thing. But actually, I think we need to realize, well, unless that is what we do, and that's a very hard thing to get into, especially if we're late to the party and there's already people better than us at that, maybe we need to start thinking about another way to look at it, or just another way to find, to choose our goals.
Yeah, I think especially how this relates to the brain, because it's all about the brain, is to figure out if the thing you're after, let's stick with losing weight, or let's losing weight, building muscle, getting flexible, whatever, but let's just stick with losing weight. If losing weight is actually a goal or not a goal, if it's a side effect from the journey to get to a goal, and if you can identify that actually this is a side effect that happens on the journey to get to a goal, then you need to figure a goal out that has that as a side effect. So for example, if it was losing weight, so initially you go, my goal is to lose weight. You sit down, you look at it and go, no, actually losing weight is the side effect from a goal, so you need to find a goal with losing weight as a side effect. So maybe you go, do you know what, I'm going to learn a martial art, and then you have something to focus on, you have a goal which can always keep improving, and you're learning something new, so the brain's happy. But again, your initial goal, the losing weight, happens as a side effect. So you get what you were after in the first place, but by actually identifying the true goal.
Yeah, you probably find then once you've got into your martial arts, you find something that you actually enjoy doing. So building muscle, for example, I don't want to just keep hammering losing weight, because I know there's other things fitness says. So if we said take building muscle, that's just so once you've got the muscle, what are you going to do? Well, actually, if I'm into martial arts, that's something that I can do, so I might be enjoying that. I'm going to get physically stronger. I'm going to start, the more I get into this, the more and more I'm going to start looking like a martial artist, for example.
Yeah.
But actually, you stop caring so much about the thing that is temporary, just looking a certain way. Well,
the form will follow function.
Yeah, it suddenly doesn't matter. You start going, actually, I'd really like to do more martial arts. I've found a skill, something that I can tangibly improve at day to day and keep getting better. There's more things to know. I can build a community around it. Obviously, building muscle is a skill, losing weight is a skill, but after a certain point, it actually is a detriment to what you want. You build muscle past a certain point, and actually you
can't move.
Gonna run out of space, or you lose weight past a certain point and you're gonna die. So
both of those, build muscle after a certain point, can't move. Lose weight past a certain point, you can't move.
Yeah.
Again, if you watched the episode before, it's all relates back to movement.
Pretty much. Yeah.
But that's exactly it though. It's if you pick the thing that should be the journey and you actually have that as your goal, if you are successful and you stick with it, you'll get to a point where you can't actually, it starts hindering you in life as well. Because if you build too much muscle, your mobility goes down the tubes. your flexibility just disappears. You know, unless you're hammering those things at the same time. If you pick the journey as the goal without clearly identifying it, you end up having to add more and more other parts of journeys in order to keep yourself on the straight and narrow, in order to stop yourself losing movement ability, losing flexibility, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you can keep it more varied as well. Like if you're gonna build muscle, well, somebody else is already the biggest guy, and so there's probably 3 or 4 people in the running to replace that guy. So you know those are the guys moving the planes and things like that. Actually, if you take your own process and well, I like martial arts and I like calligraphy, well, then as you start adding more and more things that are in this kind of your own unique process, well, you probably find you're the best in the world at that, even if nobody's put a gold medal at the end of the road. Is like, well, I'm the only guy who does this and this. It's like the Elon Musk of movement activities or fitness activities.
Yeah.
And you're doing the one thing that's unique to you, and actually, in my mind, that will make it more interesting than if you are just trying to follow exactly behind somebody else.
Yeah, if you do something that everyone's always done, you'll just be everyone. For example, myself, handstand push-ups, but I also build models. Find somebody that builds models who can outdo me in handstand push-ups. There'll be a competition.
That is an actual challenge, by the way.
That is a full-on actual challenge.
You want a handstand competition next to
Then,
model of your choice.
Come down, quickly build a 1/35th scale model for anybody listening. But yeah, so that we covered actually quite a lot of things about goals and actually journeys and not getting the two confused and being really clear about that. But the main thing we seem to come out of that is play. So it's if you find a goal that you're going to enjoy, find something you enjoy. And it seems like everyone always says this, but people always say, find something you enjoy and do it, as long as it's lifting weights, steady state cardio, or things like that. You know, find something you enjoy as long as it's one of the tried and tested fitness things.
As long as it follows these rules. Right?
Yeah.
Like rules are great. Like rules are great for giving people ideas for things, but actually what we've discovered is people who only stick to rules actually end up massively hindered later in life. So the more access to free play that we have, the better. There's an entire book play by Dr. Stuart Brand. I think it's Dr. Stuart Brand, and he's talking about how some Silicon Valley firms and stuff, they'll look into job applicants, their past history to see, you know, how much time have they spent just playing, taking things apart and trying to put things back together and things like that, because actually they end up able to problem solve in much more efficient ways. And I think a lot of the time in fitness, I guess we're always scared of people getting injured. Like there's always this, well, I don't want anything bad to happen, I don't want anything dangerous to happen, so let's make sure we tick all of these boxes. And I think that really stifles all of the play that can happen in fitness and all of the creativity. So, you know, you take squats, so people teach squats in a certain way. You want your knees to track slightly wider than your toes, for example, or this is before we put any weight, just we're going to hinge at your hips first, or some people will have different only squat to 90 or don't put your knees over your toes or anything like that.
I'm obviously going to stay quiet during this because I will just slate all of those people.
Oh, I'm going to get a punch while I keep talking. But yeah, they have all the different, you know, and if you don't follow this system, it's really, really bad. And then you do all your squats in the gym like that, and then you go home and you try and put your shopping in the cupboard and you bend over. You never squat down. You never do a perfect squat down to get the stuff out of the bag. You just reach or lean and you start moving in every weird direction. But
that's when you put your back out.
Yeah, and then you throw it's pretty much every time we have people come to us in pain, it's like, well, yeah, I was reaching up to that top shelf, and then my back went. And
I was tying my shoelace.
yeah, and it's all those positions are never the same as what you did in the gym. But in the gym, you said I have to stick to these very strict rules. And where did the rule come from? Most of the time, it came from
somebody just made it up.
They made it up, or sometimes there's even a valid rule, like the squat is probably, well, if you've got a barbell over your head and there's 200 kilos on it, and then you squat down, maybe actually this, now it's like, well, probably don't laterally tilt your spine because you're going to take all the weight onto one side, and it's way above your head, so your center of mass is way off. So this is what makes sense there. And then they go, all right, well, let's just tell everyone to do that. And well, not everyone is doing that. Not everyone's even aspiring to do that one thing with the barbell. And actually, shouldn't we have more options when we don't have the barbell over our head to be able to do whatever it is that we want to do?
So the word I pick up on there is options. The more movement options you've got, the less chance you've got of getting injured when something goes wrong. Because then your brain has been, your brain has had information from your body in these other places, in these other positions and ranges. So when something goes wrong, it doesn't just freak out. Because what happens is, if you just train in position constantly, like let's take the squat, and you do the traditional, the knees get slightly pushed out, which is crazy, because your knees should track directly over your toes. Too many people are trying to push out and externally rotate. Whenever you get to a certain depth, your femurs have to internally rotate to go lower. But I'm not going to get into dissecting a squat. But if people do a squat a certain way, whatever way they decide to squat, and that's all they ever do, when something goes wrong, say a leg buckles, they end up getting usually really injured because the brain freaks out. Because it goes, holy crap, I haven't been here before, I'm getting all this new information from these positions, I know this is going wrong, so it tries to just put the brakes on, and usually that's when muscles will overly engage and rip or tense. Or so what happens is, if you train these positions, like if you get yourself strong in weirder positions, sort of unusual positions according to the usual fitness industry positions, you're giving yourself options. So you might actually come away with a sprain instead of a tear.
And then when the best part is when you start looking at that over a longer and longer picture, you sort of go, okay, so you're telling me right now that actually my foot position, if I change the foot position in my squat, then I would end up with more options. It's like, okay, well, I've got feet forwards, feet out, feet in.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I could have one out, one in, and so I end up with like 30 or so options. Okay, cool. All right, now you're telling me that actually if I change that I've got my arm up or my arms forward or my arms to the side, so okay, so
knees out, knees in, knees neutral.
So how many possibilities are there? Now I'm into a couple of million possibilities. If I just put all of those combinations together, it's like, am I going to be able to keep track of this? And it's like, and now where my head is might matter, and then if I have my spine in all the different positions, then that might matter, and you start it's overanalyzing, but then you start realizing, like, actually, probably the best way was to not have any rules in this at all and just see. I guess this is where stuff like Portal's animal flow kind of, just move. It doesn't matter what specific positions you're going in, just move around and figure it out. And then when we get into sports, we start being a bit more specific because, again, you're lifting the heavy weight and the rule is it has to be over your head or whatever. Well, you can play around, but somebody already figured out it's easier if you just do it this way. So we'll start making rules for that. But actually, for any other time, really you need to just be playing and figuring out what is possible for you. And on the second count for that, when you're in any kind of movement practice, every sport has a perfect set of rules, and people will say every type of movement has a perfect set of rules if you want to do it absolutely perfectly. And every single person, every human that tries it is not built to match that. There's no, let's take the fastest runner in the world, Usain Bolt. Well, the perfect runner by mechanical standards probably has a nice straight spine with a perfect S-curve in it. Well, Usain Bolt had actually quite severe scoliosis, and still ended up being the fastest person in the world. So he didn't train the exact perfect way for that sport because that wasn't going to work for you. He's going to have to train how somebody with scoliosis is going to train for that sport. And by trying to just follow the set rules and parameters, even though it should be quite clear to most people that they don't look like the people who are prescribing those things. Like, those people do it because they already look like that, because they already act like that. You don't match that person. You're going to have to train in a different way.
Yeah, and even if your aspiration is to match that person, you're starting from a different start point. So you need to train differently. Every brain, every body is different. So what works for that one person, as we said at the start, I will guarantee you will not work for you. Even the people that it looks like it has worked for will either A, have had to do something slightly different to fit themselves, or B, are very close, but they're probably not exactly like that person. You know, the same as when it comes to movement. No movement in the world is exactly replicatable.
Maybe.
Can do more than once. Exactly.
This is why we didn't get into literature.
Yes, this is why we don't write for a living. But like, no movement ever can be exactly replicated. It's impossible. So even when it comes to exercise prescription and like the perfect squat or the perfect bench press, there's degrees in this, and that all depends on the individual. Every person is totally different. So even following the same training plan will give you different results.
Yeah, that's one of the big things. Really great book to read that kind of emphasizes that range by David Epstein. David Epstein? Not David Epstein. The I is one way versus the other way. But yeah, in range, he kind of looks at how we've thought that repetition is the key to learning, and actually it's variation that is the key to learning.
Yeah.
And even when you repeat the same thing as precisely as you possibly can, something check, your food is slightly more digested, and so there's better energy going to one place than another, or you're happier about how the last attempt went than how the one before that went. So actually your mood is now different, and the brain, like when the brain's taking all this information, every single time it's something slightly different. And when you take a lot of sports and activities, the amount that they're different in each go is absolutely huge. So he sets some examples about how there's not very many things that you can get good at when you're really, really young. Rubik's Cube actually turns out to be one of those things, because there are more aspects of the Rubik's Cube that is just case dependent, and so you can just learn different algorithms and different combinations. At the end of the day, you still have a lot of movement to do, so there's a variation. It's definitely useful. Probably the least variable sport would be chess, where you're going to move the pieces with your arms, but really getting better movement or ability isn't going to improve your game to that much, where actually just playing loads and loads of chess isn't going to help. So chess, you can learn
movement ability for their eyes, watching the opponent. You know, like high level chess players actually, they track the eyes and they watch the center of the board.
Yeah, well,
so
they can pick up the stuff, but probably you can pick that up from 5 years old and just run with it. It's just learn rote information. But every other sport, you're playing golf, it's just hit the ball. Well, you got to know the weather, the opponents, all of it is constantly changing all the time. Yeah,
it's I like to call it, like, if I'm teaching anybody anything in person, it's like the repetition of variability. If that makes sense. You want to do the repetition, you need the repetition, but you also need to process and understand the variability aspect. So if you, let's say, I don't know, kicking a football, so you're kicking a football, you need to go through it enough so that to a minute detail your brain can pick up all the variations that you've done pretty much of all the kicks ever, so that it can tell if it's a good one or it's a bad one. It takes in environmental changes. Your brain's processing, integrating that all at the same time to come out with an output of where to kick the ball. For example, so the wind on your arms, the wind in your hair, the wind in your clothes, the clothes against you, the feel of the ground underfoot. If you only do something once, you getting the variables and understanding that and the brain and integrating that into good output is very, very slim. But if you get the repetition, so you've done it through all the variables, there's a higher chance that you're going to be successful when you do the actual act. So that's generally the way I try to explain it to people, which isn't very good because I'm not great at explaining things. I just go on for ages. But do you get what I'm saying? It's you need to do all the variations through repetition.
Change it up, and it might take a bit longer. Like I think they have tried studies where they get people to throw a ball at a target or throw a dart at a board, and the people who repeat the exact same throw over and over learn quicker right at the very beginning, but later on they do much worse. The guys who have varied throws, varied distances, varied weights of things that they're throwing, they're able to accurately hit their spot every single time. So
they can gauge.
Yeah, maybe if you're in the very short term, if you've got a very short time period, consistency is where you want to go. All other times, you probably want to change it up as often as possible.
So yeah, novelty is a massive sort of driver for enjoyment, I think, a lot of sports, as you say, because you've got a higher rate of success because they've changed the variables. Say, say the darts player or something, they changed from distances and wind speeds and environment and all that kind of thing, as opposed to the person that just does the consistency, same thing over and over again. The enjoyment goes from that quite quickly, even if they are successful in the short term. But it's whenever they're successful with all these variables, you get the enjoyment from. So that's where I think novelty is quite an important key to enjoying the sport or activity or whatever it is you do.
Yeah, and if you look at the brain, how it actually learns things or how it figures things out, it's not about seeing what is there. It doesn't want to measure everything all the time. So it pretty much just makes assumption. Anything it's not hearing from, it's the same as what it was when it left it. So your brain is always trying to work out what is different rather than measuring everything at the same time. There was a good analogy about this I read. I think it was Feldenkrais, which I think we'll be talking about a little bit more in a bit, but he had a situation where he was trying to teach somebody who was very late in developing movement and trying to figure out, well, why? And Feldenkrais, he was kind of working out all of the rules that neuroscience would then sort of go on to confirm, but before it had even been discovered. So he's kind of making assumptions and just sort of trial and error everything. He eventually at one point worked out that this person wasn't able to distinguish right from left. And then when he was trying to teach them right and left, realized that at the first instance when he taught them, right, well, this is your left, this is your right, that person couldn't distinguish from, well, does that mean this is my left because it's the left half of me, or this is left because this part of the room is left. So if I then turn around, is left still over there, or is left over here now? And if that's the case, if left is over here now, is it because of this part of me, or is it because of something else in the room? And actually those two things, the brain went, hang on, what's different about these two things? So when you're trying to improve your throw, when you throw a different way, the brain doesn't say that was better or worse. It just says, what was different about that time? And okay, so which one do we want? Okay, we want something like this. And then it says, okay, not quite what we want. That was different. There's actually part of your brain called the cerebellum. When you think about moving consciously, so if I want to reach out and grab this hand sanitizer sitting in front of me, my motor cortex, which is my voluntary movement, comes up with like a rough plan of what that's going to look like. Yeah. And then as I start to move, my cerebellum is adjusting. So if I start to reach and I'm going the wrong way, my brain doesn't want me to now be just committed to that course of action. So
go on the boot camp.
Yeah. I start going, my cerebellum straight away goes, you're going the wrong way, man. change, go back around this way, and it'll start to just make minor corrections as I go, working out what's different. Similarly, I was told, I don't know, this was told to me by somebody at UCL, so I assumed that they knew what they were talking about. It sounded crazy. Well, it sounded crazy to me at the time, so I'm going to say it now as well. The vestibular system, I was trying to talk through this idea in gymnastics about people doing backflips or back handsprings. So they jump backwards onto their hands, and one of the things is very often you see people tilt to one side or the other. And we were trying to come up with explanations based around the vestibular system as to why that might be the case. So the vestibular system measures how fast you're going through space. It tells you whether you're leaning one way or the other. And the other thing that we know about it is, just like the muscles in the body, is if you don't use it, then it gets worse. Like, it doesn't provide accurate information, or it doesn't provide information that is as accurate anymore.
Yeah.
So is it that if I jump and I twist to my left, is that because that side is just much stronger? So when both of the vestibular canals fire, does my body want to go to the side that's stronger? Or is it the opposite, that actually this side isn't strong enough? So when my brain jumps, it realizes, I know this side isn't strong enough, you better throw yourself a bit more in that direction. And then a third theory by one of these guys was actually the vestibular system kind of works as in, when your head moves up and down, it measures the difference between how much the left side is firing and how much the right side is firing. So if the left side's firing more, it assumes that's because you're jumping to your left. And if the right side's firing more, that's because you're jumping to your right. If they're both the same, it just assumes nothing's happening. There's no, you're never able to jump just straight up.
Yeah.
Because your vestibular system would say, nothing's happening. So actually all the time, it's either a little bit more on the left, a little bit more on the right, and that you're just seeing big discrepancies in this.
That's it. I notice somewhere, it's always, especially, it's a lot of, you take the vision out because there's a lot of backwards tumbling that you get that with. It's very rare. I don't actually think I've ever had anyone, when they're doing, like, front somersaults or anything, they don't need, I don't know what you probably have, because you've obviously taught that a lot longer than I've ever been teaching it, but I'd never see someone lead forward and do a front somersault like that. It's always backwards somersault, or definitely more prevalent in backwards tumbling.
Yeah, I definitely have seen it. That's usually a big indicator for me for vestibular training required, because as soon as they go, you can kind of get an idea of, they're not able to control that. That's not something they've consciously chosen to do, to be able to see anything, because they can't see anyway. So yeah.
Cool. So we could go into things like like the chemicals involved with training, like with the kind of motivational side of it. But there's actually, I think there's so much about it, like going about norepinephrine and dopamine and all that stuff. But that would be a whole episode, I think, on its own, to be honest.
Yeah.
But all we need to really, I think, cover with it is that it's the key of setting short, achievable goals, because you can only get so much sort of willpower almost before you actually will reach a quick level. And you need to show, like the way runners will go, I'll run to the next lamppost. Because you get that little drip feed of dopamine, they just keep you going a little bit more, they stick at it. And it's the same, not just in fitness, but in learning anything. Piano, guitar, I don't know, just got musical instruments now in my head. The panpipes, whatever you want to learn. But yeah, it's just that kind of clear, you've always got to keep that drip feed up. But it's not just dopamine. You need the norepinephrine, you need the stressor chemicals as well to facilitate the learning. But that, again, that's probably a whole episode we'll do at some point.
Yeah,
quite deeply.
The easy analogy is just of your comfort zone. Like when you're doing stuff that's too easy, you're not, your brain is not stimulated. You're not getting any enjoyment out of that. And when you're pushing just beyond your capability, that's when you get the most value. And most of that is in terms of dopamine. So as you said, there's the whole relationship between just what is the right stress level for you. And one thing that I think happens when people set out on goals, I'm coming from the point of view as a handstand coach, is it's always, I want to be able to do a one-arm handstand, or I want to be able to handstand for a minute. And that doesn't come very, very quickly. And this isn't an absolute, so like there's certain personality types that's just, I want to go in every single, if I go in every single day and I'm just working towards this unachievable goal that's 10 years down the line, I'll be happy. I'll come out and I'll feel amazing that I did this thing. I don't think that's the fastest, even if that's how you like to do things, I don't think it's the fastest way. But for most people, if they're not achieving something, their brain starts to shut them down. You'll see it with toddlers, like they'll pick something up, you explain to them how it works, they'll try and do it about 3 times, if it doesn't work after 3 times, they've lost all their interest in it. And in adults, we do that, but we're just a bit more polite. So we'll stick at it a little bit more. Our brains shut off, we're not paying attention anymore. But if the guy who showed me is still watching, I'm interested in it for a little bit. What's really important is that first quick success, that release of dopamine. It seems like a weird trick, or like just something somebody would call a hack, but dopamine actually is the precursor to adrenaline. Adrenaline literally gives you more energy. Anyone who knows about adrenaline rushes, you don't feel sleepy when you get a surge of adrenaline. If you ever had it injected into you, you will wake up. You will be stronger than you just were. You will be probably more flexible. You'll be able to do more things when you get safe levels of adrenaline, or healthy levels of adrenaline in your system. One of the best ways to do that is to achieve something. As soon as you achieve something, your brain releases dopamine, your brain releases dopamine in anticipation of achieving that thing. So it's not right after you've achieved it, it's right as you're about to. Your brain will say, hey, whatever's happening right now is actually really good. I want you to do 2 things. I want you to do more and more of that. So here's a load of energy and a load of strength and a load of mobility, flexibility, whatever it is you want, I'm going to give it to you. And secondly, my memory systems are going to say, hey, whatever we're doing right now, we should write this down, because we like to do it again and again and again. And for learning, that's really, really great. For recreational drugs, that's a bit more problematic, and that's usually where we hear about dopamine. But actually, the small achievable goals, even if you're just tricking yourself, you say, I want to hold a handstand for 10 seconds. Kick up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Come back down. Well, you did what you said, or you could say, I want to do a handstand and count to 10. You'll get that little release of dopamine, and then now you can start pushing it further and further.
And as you get more accustomed to the training, you actually start to learn how to push it and when to push it and when to back off, because you're like, oh, actually, I know. You can just learn, basically. And again, it's learned by the repetition and variability.
Yeah. And the other thing about small goals is every goal doesn't have to be small. You can still have the big goal. The James Clear in Atomic Habits, he talks about, if you just improved yourself by 1% every single day, at the end of the year, you're 37 times better. And I love that philosophy. I think it's quite vague, so let's put it into the idea of learning a handstand, for example. So something we can measure by time. If you were to be able to hold a handstand for 1 second at the start of the year, and let's be super generous, that's from when your foot goes off the ground and your hands on the ground. It takes 1 second before you land on the ground or crash to the floor, whatever it is. That means you're not even balancing there. That's just
that's foot's on the ground, foot's on the ground.
If you improve that by 1% every single day, and let's say, because if you improve it by 1%, then that's 1.01 seconds on day 2. So let's just let's always round it down unless it's a whole number. Well, you're going to do a handstand for 1 second for 70 days. And anyone that I've taught would not be happy with that. If you said in 70 days you're still going to be doing the same amount of time, that doesn't fulfill I'll never get my 1 minute handstand. But actually, if we know that we've broken this down, we know we're going to be 37 times better. So by the end of the year, if we follow this, we're going to be at 37 seconds. Actually, this plan of 37 seconds or 70 days of 1 second, yeah, I can do that. And if you follow that the whole way along, half a year you've only managed a handstand for 5 seconds. So your dopamine systems are going to, oh yeah, I did a set, I have to kick up for a second, 2 seconds. Oh, I did it. Yeah, great. 5 seconds, but by 5 seconds you've done, even if you only did one handstand every day, you've done 180 handstands. That's gonna get you better at handstands. So then by the time you get to later on in the year when it really starts amping up, actually you've done quite a lot of work, but your brain you feel more energized. You're like, oh man, I'm actually achieving, every single day I achieve what I was supposed to achieve.
You're cementing these maps.
Yeah.
And you're cementing these, no, not so much maps, but you're cementing these neural connections, especially with, with a lot of the myelin and all that there, because you're getting little successes. It's bite-sized. You're able to do it, as opposed to just getting hit in roadblocks of failure all the time and what they give up.
Yeah, and that's, the more you fail, the more exhausting it becomes, and then that's what you get. Every fitness client, every client we get for general fitness is the same story. It's, I know what I need to do, I just don't have the I need somebody to motivate me to do it. And that's just because we've set an impossible, so like we were saying before, is you either have the goal of weight loss, well, when are you finished with that? That's not a specific number, it's not I just want to be better. Okay, well, you're always going to be able to be better, so pretty much every day you failed. But you haven't ever reached this apex of being the best. So you want to state the specific goal so that you can go, hey, today was a good day. I actually achieved it. I feel good about that, and I can move on to the next.
That's it. And that kind of thing, I really clearly, I think that's one of the main messages we always try and give people is identify what is a goal, what isn't a goal, what's a side effect, what's part of the journey, and then pick a goal that gives you the desired side effect, the desired journey experience, so to speak. And that brings us really nicely into training systems. And current training systems, all the different training systems that are out there, take gymnastics for example. So you've got a hugely long background in gymnastics. And that's a very regimented training style. I'm sure you've got lots to talk about there.
Yeah.
But I think they're very guilty as well of taking what should be the side effect, what should be part of the journey, and using that as the goal. So.
Yeah. I've got too many stories about gymnastics that are, I don't know if they're for this podcast. I love the idea of gymnastics because everybody looks to that as the pinnacle of human movement and fitness, and if you're good at gymnastics, you can do everything.
Yeah.
And to some extent, actually, maybe having that ability and experience to move in all these different ways is really great.
Options.
Yeah, but one of the things I think people forget is actually the the gymnastic system is not built around efficiency. So when you're learning it, we teach really small children to learn the perfect forward roll and backward roll and handstand and somersault. We kind of need to get them that young so that there's so much complexity in that stuff that they're learning that we need them to develop in that way. But it doesn't mean that it's the most efficient system for movement. Gymnastics is done mostly through the sagittal plane, so that's if you stand up straight and you bend straight forwards, that is the sagittal plane. We don't have, our body isn't built to ever really move that way specifically. We much prefer twisting and turning and
unilateral and
one-sided movement. We write with one arm rather than with both arms. We're not ambidextrous because actually most of the time we prefer to do things.
We walk in a gait. We don't somersault down the road in a
Yeah.
front summy.
That's why we use opposite arm and leg
Yeah.
as well. Is there's all the rotation and twisting going on. Gymnastics actually is designed to be the most difficult way to do things. That's how the sport was designed to be. I'm going to show that I'm stronger than everybody else by deliberately choosing the most difficult way to do the movement and doing it better than anyone else can. So yeah, if you look at like training systems like the capoeira or tricking, even breakdancing and stuff like that, you see much more twisting, and people without a sprung floor, without any assistance, they're able to generate much more force and movement because they're going towards the natural, going in the natural ways the body twists and moves.
They go with the movement.
Yeah. So gymnastics, I think, is like a good ultimate goal to achieve. But if you want movement, if you just want a movement practice, it's probably not the best one to get into at a late stage. If you're already a high-level athlete and you want to get into complementary movement, it might be a really good one to look at, just because it will force you to think really hard about what you're doing. But I actually think for adults, you're probably best to find your way into gymnastics through some of the other acrobatic movements and styles.
Yeah, because you can learn something that is actually naturally slightly more efficient, slightly more freedom, so probably slightly more enjoyable to start with in terms of reaching those little goals. And then as you're getting more confident and more comfortable with it, you can actually get a little bit tighter with your restrictions, as in your line that you'll have in, the way some like capoeira that for example, have a completely straight leg or a pointed toe.
Yeah.
But then once you get more confident and you want to push a little bit harder, you can start getting that little bit more restrictive.
Yeah.
If that's what you want.
Yeah, if that's what you want to do, and that's the one of my favorite things and least favorite things about when people compare their sports. Like I always heard, like I said, everyone thinks, oh, gymnastics, there's no other sport that allows you to move in this many ways. And I've got into a lot of sports and a lot of movement practices in my life. Every single one of them said that about skateboarding. There's no other one that allows this much expression and this much freedom to move, and you can't explore. No other discipline allows you to go through this many different spaces in the world. And then once I got taken up speed cubing, there's no other one that gave my kid this amount of confidence when they were feeling shy. And everyone likes to think their one is the best, but it was the best for a specific thing. But actually, all of those rules are just invalid if you think about it long term. Like
Exactly.
Capoeira was built to fight, so who cares if your leg is straight or not? If the other guy is unconscious, that is a victory. And in gymnastics, it's about aesthetics. That's in a way that somebody specifically decided. So of course you have to look like that. But in terms of saying one method is bad because another one is better, it's mostly nonsense.
Yeah, I agree totally. There is no perfect system. Everyone likes to think there's a perfect system, or they're always looking for the perfect system, but there isn't one. And that, I think, comes back to the fact that every single person, every single brain and nervous system is different. So you can't build a perfect system to serve. You can find the perfect system for your individual brain and nervous system and your body, but you can't find one for everybody's brain and nervous system and body.
Yeah, your life will just be different. Like you've got, as well as your life experiences, your genetics, your all of the things. Even people are saying now, as well as genetics, life trauma can be passed down through several generations.
Trauma,
and you're just never going to be. There's so many things to be different that you should never count on fitting into the same model or program as another person.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what a lot of traditional systems miss out, is just even acknowledging that. And that's why I think generally we are quite well placed to think, because obviously we love the brain and everything we do is involved, or is based around the fact that there are other systems and that we know that every brain is individual. So everything has to be adapted to that individual, and that's why we have the likes of the biofeedback that we do and things like that.
Yeah.
So that you can have the loose framework of a system, so we can work with anybody that wants to do any kind of fitness system or fitness sort of journey, but we can play within that framework because they just encourage people to keep it loose.
Yeah, well, that's because I guess our realm is less in terms of we don't teach a sport, and we're more in like what most people would consider the strength and conditioning or prehab or any of that. But I guess, it's wrong. Even in those systems, the strength and conditioning guy can work out like nobody else, and the Pilates instructor is the best at Pilates, but that doesn't mean that their stuff transfers straight over to, as part of the circus school training that we had. I remember we spent a lot of time doing ballet and Pilates, and ballet. The ballet teacher, of course, very, very mobile, flexible, great at those positions. For myself, not at all. And while maybe there was some benefits, and there's some benefits to complementary training to try and push myself to look like that ballet teacher so I could become a circus performer, is not the right thing to do. And with the Pilates, they say, you do the Pilates so you can control your body better, so that when you're doing whatever sport you're doing, it just works better. And yes, there's definitely some things you'll pick up in Pilates, but you need to still be doing the sport to get better at the sport. Like, from a gymnastics example, again, if I'm doing a somersault, there's a lot more involved in engaging my core when my inner ear is telling my brain you're hurtling very, very fast through the air, to when the Pilates instructor is asking me to do that same crunching motion, but my inner ear is totally relaxed, my eyes are closed, there's no threatening sounds in the environment.
On the ground.
I'm on the ground, so actually I'm practicing core stability in the most stable position for my core.
Yeah.
Is a great way to ask me to do extra things to it. So, but it doesn't mean I can just get up and somersault straight away, and all those things are just going to transfer over. And that's why, you try to do it, and you struggle, and then you watch the Pilates teacher. Oh my God, how come you can do that so much better?
You're very good at Pilates.
Well, that's your job. It's the one you do, and she can't do what you can do. That's how it is.
Like, we're not crapping on Pilates. Pilates is great. If you enjoy Pilates, more power to you. That's just an example we use of, stuff that a lot of people talk about being able to cross over and is useful for other things, might not necessarily for a lot of people be that.
Yeah, I think in terms of what we do, we focus more on asking the person, what do you want to be able to do? Let's just borrow from all these systems and try and fit that in. Whereas I think with a lot of these other systems, if that's what you want to get into, then it makes sense to spend a lot of time on it. Otherwise, I think you're better to just do a bit of each. A bit of Pilates is going to definitely teach your body what it feels like when your core and musculature moves into different positions that you're not expecting. A bit of Feldenkrais Awareness. Again, Feldenkrais is a huge one where there's just thousands of hours. Like, you could spend your whole lifetime just doing that, and if as a movement practice, really great. But as a complementary thing, it's going to be really great at just discovering your body internally, and you'll be able to really pinpoint certain things. And so use it for what it is, and then go back into what you do. See if there's anything transferring there. But I would say better to vary it as much as you can than to stick it into all of one.
Yeah, I think definitely 100%. Don't try and mold yourself to the sport. Take bits from that sport and other accessory sports or practices and mold them to what fits you and to help you get better at that sport. So take the bits you need to get you there.
Yeah.
But don't try and mold yourself into the picture of that sport or health journey, whatever fitness sort of journey you're on, because inevitably you probably will break.
Yeah, which is also kind of nice because the ones you'll kind of get the feeling of the ones you tend to be enjoying the most are the ones that you should probably just keep sticking with for a bit longer.
Yeah.
And if you try one and you think it sucks, you know, maybe persevere for a little while. And
don't just go, nope, I'm out here.
Maybe it gets better, but if it's been 12 weeks and you're not enjoying it at all, well, actually, it probably doesn't hold the key to being good at the thing you want.
Yeah.
Maybe that's enough experience of that, and you can just move on.
That's it. And you can always take something from it.
Yeah, we live in a time where there's enough internet resources available that you don't have to just get good at the things that happen to be nearby. Like you don't have to be into table tennis instead of badminton just because the table tennis coach happens to be in your backyard. So you can kind of play around and try and test bits of everything to build up the base of the things you actually enjoy and like.
Yeah, so I think overall we're looking at for find something you like, find something that brings you, like what's our name, Marie Kondo, does it bring you joy?
Brings you joy. If it doesn't spark joy,
that's it.
Agreed.
So find something that you get enjoyment from. Find something that as a goal that is actually a goal. So that I think is generally the hardest one actually, is for people to sit down and clearly identify this is the goal that has the same desired side effects that I want.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's weight loss, muscle building, flexibility, whatever, they're all side effects, they're not the goal. And then finally, just feel free to borrow from as many things as possible and seek out as many other people from as many other things that can help you get better at whatever goal you choose and the journey that you enjoy that you're on.